Good morning, everybody. Good morning, all you magnificent melon heads. Happy Monday, everybody. Today is March 4th, 2024, and a new week is upon us. Off to a running start this week. We've got another developer in China is getting hauled into Hong Kong court with a liquidation petition. This time it is developer Shimao, and this story just beautifully illustrates the slow motion train wreck of the Chinese housing collapse. Shimao defaulted on their offshore bonds, their dollar-denominated bonds, all the way back in July of 2022, right? Almost 2 years ago. I mean, here we are, March of 22, right? So a year and a half at least ago, almost 2 years ago, they default on their bonds. They're just now getting hauled in front of court. This thing has been going on for years. They've been taking their sweet time. And for whatever reason, late Friday, Deutsche Bank finally decided that it's time to hold Shimao's feet to their fire. They're like, hey, guys, it's been 2 years since these people stopped paying us. I'm beginning to think they're not good for it. Maybe we should take them to court. Now, we finally got that liquidation petition from Evergrande. That one happened a few weeks ago. And then it was about 2 weeks ago, we found out Country Garden was having a liquidation petition filed against them. Now it is Shimao. One by one, these developers dropping like flies. They've all been defaulting. They haven't been paying their bills for years now. The home sales keep falling. And you have to wonder how long until these Chinese financial institutions, how long until it really spreads to their banks. I thought it was last fall. I really thought last fall is when that was going to happen. The Chinese have been able to do this same extend and pretend thing that we've been watching happen here with our smaller banks and commercial real estate. Well, we've got another one now, Shimao Group, getting hauled in front of Hong Kong court. Meanwhile, we've had Chinese Premier Li Kang has decided he's not going to hold a press briefing today. This is a 30-year tradition of after this Congress or after this big meeting that they have, that the premier would hold this interactive press briefing. It was a very rare instance where Chinese officials get to interact with the press and the public and actually get asked questions instead of just making scripted Communist Party talking points. Well, they're throwing that one out. That's not even happening. So even less transparency from the Chinese government, even as these liquidation petitions are getting filed. We've got a monster fine was just handed down to Apple by the European Commission, almost $2 billion, surrounding anti-competitive practices with the pricing of music streaming services. It turns out Apple didn't allow apps like Spotify or some of these others, maybe Pandora. They wouldn't let them know, hey, guys, we charge you a higher price on the App Store for your subscription because Apple takes so much money from us. Now, hey, there are these cheaper options where you can go subscribe to our service elsewhere, but we're not allowed to tell you because Apple doesn't let us share that information with you in our apps. And the EU is saying, well, hey, that's anti-competitive. You're not allowed to do that. Here is a $2 billion fine. So that's driving Apple stock a little bit lower this morning. We've also got Joann's Fabrics. Talk about a flashback. I mean, that's one that takes me back to my childhood. Mom was always buying fabric, always making something. Joann's Fabrics is said to be in talks for Chapter 11 bankruptcy filing right now. Joann's Fabrics has 850 stores, about 21,000 employees. But supposedly this Chapter 11 bankruptcy that they're working on would allow Joann's Fabrics to continue operating, but basically the company would just be handed over to the lenders that it owes money to. And, well, we'll find out more about that in the days to come. Apparently, inflation in Turkey has just hit 67%. You may recall it wasn't too long ago that Hafiz Gayurkan, the Turkish central banker, was relieved of her post in rather spectacular fashion. She had only been there for about a year. She was the fifth head of the Turkish central bank in 4 years because, well, President Erdogan just does whatever he wants, and he thinks that lowering interest rates is how you fight inflation. It's not. And, well, they were changed out their central banker about a month ago, and they said, we're done with the rate hikes. We think inflation is beaten. And, well, inflation went ahead and got worse. And I would add, guys, inflation got worse at a time when energy prices are pretty low. This is core inflation. This isn't the price of gas. This isn't geopolitics. This isn't Putin. You know, this isn't the story we were fed last year or in 2022 about inflation. This is everything else now. Services, core, strip out the volatile food and energy. Stuff is getting more expensive. And look no further than Turkey for that one. So a lot going on in the world today. And meanwhile, we've got Nvidia has rather hilariously or frighteningly, depending on your outlook, has just passed Saudi Aramco in market cap. Nvidia is officially the third most valuable company in the world behind just Apple and Microsoft, passing the largest oil company in the world by market cap recently, over $2.06 trillion in market cap for Nvidia. That's a company that is engaged in all kinds of circular accounting, whether you want to call it channel stuffing or round tripping, whatever they're doing, they're vendor financing. They're giving money to their customers so their customers can give it right back to them, and they're calling it organic revenue growth. Their biggest customers, Microsoft, Meta, they're all developing their own chips, so their biggest customers are going to be their biggest competition in a few years. The fall from grace from Nvidia is going to be spectacular. Now, the point is, it may fall from a much higher level than it's currently at. The number keeps going up without end. It's relentless. It's almost taken on a life of its own. You've got this passive investing right now. Everybody is afraid of putting a sell rating on Nvidia. Nobody wants to be the only one saying, guys, this has gone too far. Everybody's just like, oh, yeah, buy Nvidia. We're telling our clients to buy Nvidia. Thank you. That'll cost you 2%. Sooner or later, that's going to stop. But today is not that day, because even more hilarious is that super microcomputer has just been added to the S&P 500. That's a company that 4 years ago or 3.5 years ago, they were fined by the SEC for basically fraudulent earnings releases where they were shipping product to their customers that they didn't even order just to book it as revenue to keep their numbers inflated. Talk about a company run by crooks. Well, they're now part of the S&P 500. So congratulations, you guys make shelves that NVIDIA's chips go on. I hear they're very nice shelves. Now they're in the S&P 500. That stock has rallied over 1,000% in the last year. Good luck with that, guys. Stories like this always end well. They always end so well for people who pile in at the top. So why don't we shrink my big melon of a head and let's see what's going on in the markets today. Guys, while we're doing that, don't forget that like button and that subscribe button. We do this every morning. So have your coffee with the melon heads as we go through markets. And just check it in on CNN's Fear Greed Index. And once again, we are in extreme greed territory at a 79. We've been here for a long time. This market, to say this market is running on extreme greed is to put it mildly. This market is just going up just because, whether it's passive investing, manipulating the VIX, zero data expiration options, whatever is driving this market to new highs on a seemingly daily basis, extreme greed. I guess that summarizes what's going on here. But today, however, we've actually got a little bit of red. The S&P is down 11 points ahead of the opening bell, just 1/4%. The Dow is down 190 points, almost 0.5% lower ahead of the opening bell this morning. And the NASDAQ is down just 7.5 points or 0.04%, just barely in the red ahead of the open. We've got a slightly stronger dollar, currently at 103.87. The Dixie is up 1 basis point this morning. And looking at the bond market, we've got mostly higher yields. The 30-year is yielding 4.371. That's up about 4 basis points. The 10-year is at 4.229. That's up 5 basis points this morning. 2-year, 4.583, also up 5 points. And even the 1 month is at 5.395, up 1.5 points ahead of the open this morning. Looking over at commodities, we have got gold. Look at that, $2,100 for gold, up $4 this morning or 0.2% higher for April gold futures at $2,100. It's nice to see that 21 handle for gold. Congratulations, stackers. Silver's getting in on it too. May silver futures at $23.58 this morning. That's up 22 cents or almost a full percent higher. Platinum is up about 0.8%. We've got palladium is down about 0.8%. And West Texas Intermediate crude oil, April futures at $80.20. That's up about 1/4 this morning or 0.3% higher. We've also got Bitcoin is up again today, finally broken through that level of resistance right around 62,500. Check out Bitcoin's price, $65,100 this morning. Bitcoin's just been on a monster run here. We had this resistance at 62,000. I'm sorry, at 52,000. I'm getting my hands. It's going up so fast, it's hard to remember your tens digits. So we struggled to break through 52,000, and then we finally just absolutely tore through that. We came up as high as 64. Then, of course, Coinbase took away the buy button a few days ago. So we lingered around 62 for a couple of days. And now here we are breaking out of that level, 65,000 and counting for Bitcoin this morning. Congratulations, Bitcoin bulls. And again, guys, the halving isn't even here yet. We've got another month and a half still before that halving hits. And that's historically, that is when the big moves happen in Bitcoin, is in 18 months following the halving. Now, here's the big story this morning. Deutsche Bank to file liquidation suit against Chinese developer Shimao, according to sources. Deutsche Bank is preparing a liquidation lawsuit in Hong Kong against Chinese developer Shimao Group, two sources said, in a rare move by a foreign firm that comes amid rising credit defaults and China's deepening property sector crisis. Shanghai-based Shimao is among the many Chinese developers that have defaulted on offshore bonds after it missed the interest and principal payments for a $1 billion offshore bond in July of 2022. What took you so long? I mean, these guys, they stopped paying a long time ago, and they're just now getting around in court. Wouldn't it be nice if you could stop paying your bills and nothing happened to you for like 18 months? I mean, man, if you miss a doctor's bill by a week, your phone starts ringing off the hook. These guys went 18 months without paying $1 billion in bonds, and they're just now getting hauled into court. After that missed payment, its entire $11.7 billion worth of offshore debt was deemed to be in default. That's called a cross-default provision, where if you default on one offshore bond, you have officially defaulted on all of them. So they've got $11.7 billion worth of debt that is in default. The German bank, which is one of the creditors of Shimao, is looking to file a petition this month after it found the developer's debt restructuring terms unacceptable, said two people with knowledge of the matter. Now, scrolling down a little bit here, Shimao was the first major Chinese developer to kick off formal negotiations on restructuring terms with creditors in 2022. That's for its $11.7 billion in offshore debts. Last December, it updated a debt revamp plan that aimed to cut its offshore debt by up to $7 billion by exchanging some debt for new loans with maturities of up to 9 years, among other proposals. Shimao has not yet reached an agreement with creditors on the new terms, the sources said, with creditors not willing to accept the proposed 50% haircut to their investments. They may end up regretting that. If they wouldn't accept a 50% haircut, they're almost certainly not going to get 50% back in liquidation. These companies, with what property sales are doing, these companies are hopelessly indebted. They're never going to get out from under this. Honestly, I don't really know what Deutsche Bank is thinking here, why they took so long, and what they're hoping to get back. Pennies on the dollar if they're lucky. The question is, who is next? The question is, what financial institutions are going to take such a big hit from all these defaults? I suspect European banks are more exposed than anybody else to this. And, well, only time will tell. Deutsche Bank hauling Shimao into court. And this is on the same morning we get this story. China scraps Premier's Li's briefing, breaking with years of convention. China's Li Kang will become the first premier in 3 decades to not hold a press briefing at the annual parliamentary meetings, removing a rare platform for investors to learn more about the nation's policy direction as President Xi Jinping consolidates control over the world's second largest economy. The country's number 2 official won't take questions at the close of the National People's Congress for the rest of its 5-year term, apart from in special circumstances. That's according to official spokesperson Lu Quinjian said on Monday in a briefing. The cohort of lawmakers is set to gather each year until 2027. The annual press conference by the sitting premier has been in place since at least 1993, scrapping one of the few events in China's political calendar where a top leader can interact with the public comes at a moment when the ruling Communist Party is facing growing scrutiny over restricting access to information. This is communists doing communist things, guys. I guess it's not very surprising, but as the economic problems get worse and worse, China is getting more and more opaque, and they are clamping down more and more on their financial controls. And check this one out. This I found very interesting this morning. I'm looking right now at the Shanghai Composite, or the SSE. This is a big stock exchange in China. Now, you can see we bottomed out here in the beginning of February, and stocks have just been bouncing ever since. We had a little bit of volatility, but they're still going up here. Now, this is after China rolled out all these controls that said, hey, hedge funds, you're not allowed to sell. You're not allowed to sell before 11 a.m., all these different controls and loosening capital restrictions, all kinds of things that have sent the SSE higher. Now, take a look at the Hang Seng. That's the Hong Kong exchange for the same stocks. And you can see we got a little bit of a bounce off of those February lows, but that now we're back kind of hugging this downward trend line. Now, the difference here is in Hong Kong, it's the same companies, but you've got a lot of foreign investors buying and selling in Hong Kong, foreign investors who are not subject to those controls that the Chinese investors are in the SSE. And so you can kind of tell the difference between the two charts. One continues to head higher because, well, they took away the sell button. And the other one, well, they've made the turn and are resuming lower. So price controls never work. They just lead to more and more problems. The Chinese haven't gotten that memo. I guess we'll see in the weeks ahead. Now, let's talk about this one from Apple this morning. They're hit with a more than $2 billion, with a more than $1.95 billion EU antitrust fine over music streaming. It's a pretty big fine. I'm not sure they even make $2 billion off of their music streaming. Their services revenue has been growing, but that's a pretty hefty fine from the European Commission. The EC, the European Commission, or the European Union's executive arm, on Monday hit Apple with a 1.8 billion euro or $1.95 billion antitrust fine for abusing its dominant position in the market for the distribution of music streaming apps. The commission said it found that Apple had applied restrictions on app developers that prevented them from informing iOS users about alternative and cheaper music subscription services available outside of the app. Now, I don't know that you're really required to advertise for the competition. That being said, it looks like they put restrictions. They didn't let their customers advertise those cheaper prices elsewhere, and that's where the EU has the problem. Apple also banned developers of music streaming apps from providing any instructions about how users could subscribe to these cheaper offers, the commission alleged. This is Apple's first antitrust fine from Brussels and is among one of the biggest dished out to a tech company by the EU. Apple stock this morning is down 1.25% ahead of the opening bell, trading at $177.38. All things considered, Apple stock is doing all right this morning. And in another sign of the difference between Wall Street and Main Street and how stocks and bubbles just keep going up without end, no matter how bad things get in the rest of the economy, we've got this story. This is a sad one here. Crafts retailer Joann's Fabric is planning a bankruptcy filing that would hand the keys off to the lenders. Crafts retailers Joann Inc. is considering a bankruptcy filing as soon as next week as part of a deal that would hand control of the company to lenders while allowing it to shed expensive debt, according to people with knowledge of the matter. The company, which sells fabric and craft supplies and has around 850 stores in the United States, has been holding confidential talks with its lenders as it seeks fresh capital to bolster its cash reserves. Discussions are ongoing and plans aren't final, but the company is seeking to line up enough support from lenders that would allow it to exit Chapter 11 quickly in what's known as a pre-pack filing. The people said Chapter 11 bankruptcies allow a company to continue operating while it works out a plan to repay its creditors. Joann has struggled to maintain liquidity and manages inventory levels amid challenging environment for retailers. It's raised more than $34 million in a sale and leaseback deal for its Hudson, Ohio facility, but it's contending with high interest rate expenses and required term loan payments, Moody's Investor Services wrote in a note in January. So this is another retailer that's just struggling here. Unfortunately, a lot of jobs on the line. Hopefully, they're able to come out of this without having to shut down all these stores. 21,000 employees for Joann's Fabrics. And shifting gears overseas now, we've got Turkey's annual inflation rate soars to 67%. Good God, 67%. I mean, think about what the people in Turkey are living with right now. We peaked at, 9.1% was the highest CPI ever got here in the States. I know CPI, they're manipulating government stats. It was probably higher than that. But the official number peaked at 9.1%. They're at 67 in Turkey right now. How do you plan for anything when your currency is losing value at that speed? Turkey's annual consumer price inflation soared to 67.07% in February. That's according to the Turkish Statistical Institute on Monday. Analysts polled by Reuters had anticipated annual inflation would climb to 65.7% last month. Looks like that one was a little bit low. The combined sector of hotels and cafes and restaurants saw the greatest annual price inflation increase to 94.78%, followed by education at almost 92%, while the rate for health stood at 81.25%, transportation almost 78%. That's according to the Statistical Institute. Food and non-alcoholic beverages, that jumped 71%. These numbers are just staggering here. The strong figures are fueling concerns that Turkey's central bank, which had indicated last month that its painful 8-month-long hiking cycle was over, may have to return to tightening. They fired Hafiz Gay Erkan. She was rather humorously the former co-CEO of First Republic Bank here in the United States. She became the head of Turkey's central bank, the fourth head of the Turkish central bank in 3 years. She didn't even last a year. She's gone. Now we're on the fifth central banker in 4 years. They're like, yeah, we're done with raising rates. And then, well, crap, inflation gets higher again right after they say they're done raising rates. Whoops, might have to start hiking again. The stronger than expected rise in Turkish inflation to 67.1% year over year in February adds to our concerns, given that it comes on the back of a large increase in inflation in January and the strength of household spending growth in Q4. That's according to Liam Peach, senior emerging markets economist at the London-based Capital Economics. Core price pressures continue to run hot, and if this continues, the possibility of a restart to the central bank tightening cycle will only increase in the coming months. And here is a chart of Turkey's inflation rate, and you can see it looked like it was starting to level off here, but another step change higher, 67.07%. And no signs of slowing. It's still going higher. So, my heart goes out to the people in Turkey. I don't know how you do business. By the way, my moderator, Mish, he's traveling. He's visiting in Turkey right now. He says all the menus at restaurants are written in pen because they have to change the prices almost every day. It's just really hard to do business in this environment. And unfortunately, Erdogan is not done making a mess out of his nation's currency over there. Now let's talk about this one, because this story is just grotesque. Nvidia leaps Aramco to be the world's third most valuable company. Saudi Aramco, the largest oil company and the largest oil producing country in the world, Aramco, and Nvidia is now bigger than them. Nvidia Corp has claimed yet another milestone by overtaking Saudi Aramco in market value, making the chipmaker the world's third most valuable company after Apple and Microsoft. The company ended Friday's session at $2.06 trillion, closing above the $2 trillion mark for the first time. Meanwhile, Aramco's value dipped to $2.03 trillion, according to data compiled by Bloomberg. So we've got this AI maker who doesn't even make their chips. They just own the IP on the chips, and they're now worth more than a company that ships hundreds of millions of barrels of oil. Okay. All right. Good luck with that, Nvidia bros. Supermicro shares jump as AI bet gears up for the S&P 500 entry. This is even better. Supermicro Computers, which is run by absolute dirtbags, they are going to be in the S&P 500 now. Shares of Supermicro Computer jumped another 12% in pre-market trading on Monday after the AI server maker was set to join the S&P 500 index, highlighting the growing dominance of AI stocks in Wall Street's benchmark index. The San Jose, California-based firm is among the biggest beneficiaries of the AI frenzy on Wall Street. Its shares have climbed over 1,000% since the end of 2022, including a more than threefold jump in 2024, taking its market value to $50.6 billion. Guys, it's only March. It's March 4th. What are we, about 55 days into the year, 56 days into the year, and this stock has already quadrupled? It's increased in value threefold. Come on, guys. I get it. AI is exciting and it's new technology, and we're like, oh yeah, it's going to change the world and all this stuff. And chatbots are cool, okay. And it can spit out GIFs in seconds that are historically inaccurate, but they're pretty pictures. But a threefold jump in 3 months, up 1,000% in a year for a company that, what do? They make glorified shelves, guys. These are server racks, and now they're in the S&P 500. Well, good luck, Supermicro shareholders. Remember, guys, if you never take profits, you never actually make any money. But definitely never sell. Whatever you do, NVIDIA bros, never sell. Thank you very much. Nashville Pasta Man says, a friend who's a football coach asked me to recommend an AI stock. I sent him your video to quote bomb. It's a bubble. Hope you and the Mishter are well. Thank you very much, Nashville. I appreciate that. Mish is well. Thank you for sending the video out. By the way, we will have an update on that Hyperscale Nexus story later today. There has been new developments in the saga of Hyperscale Nexus, an American cannabis company. Look for that one in a couple of hours. Got some developments over the weekend on that one. And thank you very much for, when your football coach is asking you to recommend an AI stock, again, if only there were signs that we were near a top, guys. If only there were signs. Thank you for that anecdata. Mr. Nashville Pasta Man. And thank you to Easy Fix says, I'm using the gamble risk indicator. Okay, I've got a risk indicator now. The second you cave and turn bullish, I'm selling in 2024. I think I'm the last one. I don't know. There may be one or two more bears left. I don't know, like in Yellowstone or something, or Yosemite. But I'm pretty sure I'm the last one here. You, sir, are the last line in the sand. Well, look, I can tell you, I'm not bearish. All right, this economy is hosed in such an unbelievable fashion. But I will say stocks can still go higher. Don't mistake that for bullishness. All right, because the cemeteries are just full of guys who tried to call a top in a market mania. You can be right and still lose everything. So the number could still go up. The number could still go higher. Does that make me bullish? Hell no. Hell no. This market is, simply put, it is a joke. All right. All you guys who are sitting here, you're like, oh, the fundamentals are strong and the demand for these chips is so amazing. And it's world-changing technology. You will be the punchline of history when all's said and done. When the dust settles from this market collapse, and it will collapse, the world will for generations look back and say, what the hell were you thinking? But today is not that day. So in the meantime, enjoy number go up, bulls, because you guys are still coming out ahead of this one. Thank you, Easy Fix. I appreciate the super chat and the support of the channel. And thank you, everybody, for having your coffee with the melon heads. I appreciate that very much. I appreciate the super chats and all my channel members and my blue wrenches. Thank you, guys. Again, big update coming on that hyperscale Nexus story in the next few hours. Look for that one later today. Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. I love you guys. Everybody, until next time, live small and dream big.